Welcome to my channel, C.S. Lewis T. In today's video we step into a story that feels almost too dark to believe, yet strangely close to our own world. The title may sound like a warning, and perhaps it is. The night angels vanished, and demons took control. But before we rush into the chaos, let's start with a single night, one that began quietly, with no sign of danger, no shadow to warn what was about to unfold. It was a town like any other, ordinary streets, ordinary families, ordinary lives. People went to work, children laughed in the parks, church bells echoed on Sundays. But beneath the calm surface, there was an unspoken fear, a sense that the light which once guided this place was slowly fading. The people spoke of the night angels, guardians no one could see, but whose presence was always felt. They were said to keep the darkness away, to protect every soul from the whisper of evil. Whether you believed in them or not didn't matter. As long as the angels watched, peace held steady. But on that night, something changed. The air itself grew heavy, like the world was holding its breath. Dogs barked at shadows, the wind carried voices that did not belong to the living, and even the stars seemed to hide. The children who once slept without fear woke crying, pointing to corners of their rooms where nothing could be seen, yet something was there. And the elders, who knew the old stories, whispered a warning. If the angels ever vanish, nothing will stand between us and what waits in the dark. No one wanted to believe it, but belief wasn't needed. When the bells struck midnight, the town felt it, an emptiness so complete it left people trembling. The night angels had gone. No sound of wings in the sky, no gentle warmth protecting the streets. For the first time in generations, the world felt unguarded. And when the protectors vanished, something else moved in to take their place. At first, it was small. A child's laughter turning suddenly hollow. A shadow stretching farther than it should. Faces in the crowd that seemed familiar, but with eyes too sharp, too dark, too knowing. These were not just tricks of fear. The people were beginning to see the truth. Without angels, the balance was broken. The demons were no longer outside. They were here and they were hungry for control. But who were these demons really? Were they monsters of the unseen world, or had they been among us all along, waiting for the moment when light would fail? Families began to distrust one another. Whispers turned to arguments, and the night itself grew longer, as though the sun was hesitant to rise. And in the middle of it all, a few brave souls stepped forward, desperate to uncover why the angels had vanished and how to bring them back. Their search would lead them into places no one dared to enter, to secrets buried deep in forgotten ruins, to voices calling from the other side of dreams. And with each step, the line between human and demon blurred. Could the people survive a night where darkness had no rival? Or would the demons claim not just the town, but the very hearts of those who once believed they were safe? Stay with me, because this is only the beginning. What happened next would change everything, and the truth about why the night angels vanished is far more terrifying than anyone could imagine. The nights grew heavier after the angels disappeared, and the town could no longer pretend it was just superstition. The main conflict wasn't only the presence of demons, but the slow unraveling of human trust. Neighbors who once shared meals now locked their doors against each other. Parents kept their children close, whispering prayers they weren't even sure anyone was listening to anymore. It wasn't only the fear of what lurked in the shadows. It was the suspicion that the shadows had already slipped into familiar faces. One subplot that began to unfold was inside the old church at the edge of town. The pastor, once a man of unshakable faith, started to doubt his own prayers. He confessed quietly to a few that he no longer felt the warmth he once believed came from the angels. Some claimed his silence was proof that even he had been touched by the darkness. Others swore they had seen a dim glow near the altar at night, as though something sacred still lingered, barely holding on. The conflict grew not just between light and dark, but between belief and despair. At the same time, a group of young people gathered secretly, determined to find the cause of the angels' disappearance. They were convinced there was a clue hidden in the old ruins beyond the forest, a place said to be cursed long before the town was even built. While the elders warned them not to disturb what slept there, the urgency of their fear pushed them forward. They believed if the angels had been pulled away, it was not by chance, but by something ancient and deliberate. And while these different struggles unfolded, a quiet question haunted everyone. What if the demons weren't just coming from the outside, but rising from within the people themselves? The deeper the nights grew, the more restless the town became. Whispers of strange sounds spread, low chants carried by the wind, and shapes moving through the trees when no one should have been there. The group of young searchers returned from the forest pale and shaken, carrying only fragments of broken stone, etched with symbols they could not read. They spoke of hearing wings, not of angels, but heavier, slower, like something dragging itself through the sky. Their words only deepened the fear already curling through the streets. Inside the homes, people no longer trusted the silence. Lamps burned through the night, but shadows danced across the walls as though mocking the light. Families began to notice changes in one another, voices that trembled without reason, sudden bursts of anger, dreams that left people waking in cold sweats. The demons weren't only around them, they seemed to be inside them, tugging at the weakest parts of their hearts. And with every passing hour, the boundary between human and demon blurred a little more. The pastor, desperate to restore some sense of hope, gathered the townspeople for one last midnight service. As the church filled, the air thickened with unease. The candles flickered violently, though no wind touched them. When he opened the old book to pray, the words twisted on the page, shifting into letters he had never seen before. His voice cracked, and the silence that followed was more terrifying than any scream. At that moment, outside the church, a sound split the night. It was not thunder, though it shook the ground. It was not music, though it carried rhythm. It was the rising roar of something awakening, something that had waited for the angels to vanish. And now it was free. The roar outside the church froze everyone where they stood. Mothers clutched their children, elders lowered their heads, and the pastor gripped the book so tightly his knuckles turned white. The sound was unlike anything they had ever heard before. It seemed to carry not just through the air but through the bones, shaking the spirit itself. Some swore they felt the ground pulse as though the earth was alive and breathing beneath them. Fear told them the demons had finally arrived in full, but what came next was something no one expected. The doors of the church swung open with a violent crash, though no hands touched them. The cold night spilled inside, carrying with it a strange glow that shimmered like fire and shadow at once. For a moment, it looked as though the angels had returned, but the light was wrong. It bent unnaturally, curling in shapes that unsettled the eye. People whispered in confusion, hope flickering and fading all in the same breath. Then came the revelation that struck like lightning. These were not angels, but echoes of them, twisted reflections of the guardians they had once trusted. The demons hadn't come as strangers, they had come wearing the faces of the vanished angels. The second twist unraveled the last threads of certainty. If the angels themselves had been captured, corrupted, or willingly transformed, then who was left to fight for the town? The very protectors people had prayed to were now standing as their greatest threat. Some fell to their knees, broken by the betrayal, while others screamed that this was proof there was no hope left. The conflict was no longer just about resisting demons. It was about facing the horrifying truth that light itself might be turned into darkness. Outside, the corrupted figures hovered, their wings beating against the night sky, scattering sparks that burned into the ground. With every strike of their wings, the air grew colder, heavier, as if reality itself was bending under their power. The young searchers from the forest stepped forward, trembling but unwilling to back away. They had pieced together a fragment of the old writing they had found, and it hinted at something worse. The angels hadn't simply vanished. they had been taken by a force older than demons, something that had waited silently beneath the earth, feeding on human doubt. The townspeople realized too late that they were not just facing demons. They were standing at the edge of a much larger war. And as the echoes of angels circled overhead, the roar came again, louder than before, signaling that the true enemy had only just begun to rise. The roar that shook the earth grew unbearable until the church windows shattered, scattering glass like frozen rain. The corrupted angels descended, their twisted wings cutting through the night. The townspeople screamed, some hiding beneath pews, others frozen in terror. But in that moment of chaos, the young searchers stepped forward, holding the fragments of stone they had carried from the ruins. The strange symbols etched into the pieces began to glow faintly, casting a light that pushed back the unnatural darkness seeping through the doors. The pastor, though trembling, recognized the glow for what it was, an echo of the original covenant that bound the angels to protect the world. Summoning what faith remained in him, he raised his voice not in fear, but in a steady chant that merged with the light. For a moment, the corrupted figures faltered, their forms flickering between what they had been and what they had become. The people saw the truth. The angels were not gone, but chained, their light smothered under layers of shadow. The conflict reached its peak as the young group pressed the glowing fragments together, completing the broken seal. A surge of radiance erupted, flooding the church and spilling into the night. The corrupted angels shrieked, their twisted forms cracking like glass under pressure. The townspeople rose with renewed strength, their fear lifting as if the darkness had no hold on them anymore. It seemed, at last, that the balance was being restored, that the angels were breaking free from their prison of shadow. But just as hope surged, the final twist revealed itself. From beneath the earth came a second roar, deeper and older than the first, shaking the ground so violently that the church itself seemed ready to collapse. The light that freed the angels also woke something else, the very force that had captured them in the first place. The townspeople stood frozen as the earth split open beyond the churchyard, revealing a cavern of endless black, and within it, eyes that had been watching long before angels or demons ever walked the skies. The angels, now freed, rose above the town, but even their renewed strength dimmed before what was awakening. The people realized with dread that the true battle was only beginning, and the night they had survived was just the opening act of something far more dangerous. The ground trembled as the cavern yawned open, and the eyes within glowed like embers in the void. For a breathless moment it felt as though the town would be swallowed whole. But the freed angels, though weakened, rose higher into the night sky, forming a barrier of light between the people and the darkness below. Their glow was not as strong as it once was, yet it carried enough to steady trembling hearts. The young searchers, clutching the broken stone fragments, understood that they had awakened something vast, but also that they had given the angels a second chance. The roar from the depths slowly faded, not in defeat but in retreat, as though the ancient force chose to wait for another time. The cavern closed, sealing the blackness away, and the trembling earth grew still. The townspeople poured out of the church, staring at the sky where the angels hovered, restored yet changed. They no longer seemed like distant guardians. They appeared closer, almost human. Their wings dim but steady, as if reminding the people that light survives not because it never falters, but because it rises again after every shadow. The pastor lowered the old book, his voice carrying a final prayer that was not just words but gratitude. The fear that had divided the people gave way to quiet unity. Neighbors who once locked their doors against each other began to share food, comfort, and courage. The young searchers, though weary, felt the weight of their journey lift, knowing their choice to face the forest had saved more than their small town. It had reminded everyone that even when protectors vanish, courage can be born among ordinary hearts. The subplots tied themselves into quiet resolutions. The pastor found his faith not in perfection, but in the resilience of those he served. Families who had feared the demons within each other found strength in honesty and forgiveness. And though the angels did not promise to stay forever, they left behind the knowledge that darkness can only rule if people surrender to it. As dawn finally broke, golden light spilling across rooftops, the town knew it had survived the night that nearly consumed it. The sky was clear, the air lighter, and though the memory of the roar still lingered, so did a greater truth. Light does not vanish, it transforms, waiting to be kindled again. And perhaps the greatest guardians are not only the angels above, but the courage within each human heart.